Good morning. Good morning and welcome to this hearing of the State Administration and Regulatory Oversight hearing. I am one of your co-chairs, Walter Timilty. I have the privilege of representing the Norfolk, Bristol, and Plymouth State Senate District, and I am here along with my co-chair, Representative Jen Benson from Lunenburg, and congratulations, Representative Benson, was just appointed as our co-chair from the House side of this joint committee yesterday. So welcome, great baptism. Yeah. Great baptism here with this committee hearing, which I'm sure will be very passionate and very respectful. With that, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize my colleagues on the committee. To my right, Representative Paul Schmid from Westport. Thank you, Paul. And to my left, Representative Bill Driscoll from Milton. To my left, right after Representative Driscoll, Representative Linda Dean Campbell from Methuen. Thank you, Linda. And to the far left, Representative Denise Provost from Somerville. Thank you, Denise. First of all, on behalf of each and every member of this Joint Committee on State Admin and Regulatory Oversight, we welcome you. We assure you that every sign-in participant looking to address this committee will have the opportunity to have their voice heard. Additionally, I assure you that you will receive the respect of each and every committee member, staff member, and court officer. We anticipate this to be a very productive day. However, we will not arrive at any determinations today. This is purely an informational hearing. We are looking forward to hearing your stories, your opinions, your concerns, and your suggestions. Written testimony is welcomed, and we assure you your written testimony will receive the same consideration as any oral testimony that is offered here today. There will also be a time limit. We would request respectfully that each and every witness adhere to a 2 to 3 minute time limit in order to make sure that everybody is heard today. The bills in charge will be given the utmost consideration, and we welcome you to the State House. We thank you. I might also add that given the myriad obligations that state legislators have each and every day, that we will take members of the House and Senate out of turn so that they may be able to discharge their duties in other parts of the building. And with that, we will call up Senator Cindy Cream, please, to start off our hearing. Thank you, Senator Cream.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman Timilty and Chairwoman Benson. Congratulations, and thank you for calling me out of turn. So I'm here to testify on the bill, which is the bill that you have today, the bill that would prevent discrimination in state contracts. So you will hear from a lot of people today, and you will hear people on both sides of the issue. For me, I contemplated, and somebody mentioned, wearing a yellow sticker and a blue sticker, because I think this bill allows both things to happen. You will hear from people today who will tell you that this bill does not go far enough, that they are concerned with boycott, divestment, and that this bill does not do that. And you will hear from people today that say this bill is against the First Amendment, and this is against free speech. And the truth is that this bill does not do that either. What you must look at when you look at this bill is the plain meaning of the bill. You will hear that the bill itself on its face is an anti-discrimination bill, but the opposition says that the legislative intent on previous bills that were filed and withdrawn are what you should be concerned with. But we all know, lawyers and non-lawyers, that legislative intent is really the intent of the legislature when they pass a bill, what they said and what they did. And what they filed years ago or previously is not the legislative intent of a bill that gets voted when they voted. So that aside, let's talk about the bill. We have a constitution. We're very fortunate in Massachusetts. We have a constitution that says you can't discriminate against anyone based on their race, creed, religion, or national origin. We all agree to that. We're lucky to live in Massachusetts. You can boycott, you can do anything you want, but you cannot discriminate. So when does one's legal actions become discrimination? How do we differ between a boycott and discrimination? You can boycott, but you can't discriminate, and that's what this bill says. You cannot act based only on person's race, creed, religion, or where they come from. We have a president that has an executive order prohibiting people from many Muslim countries from coming to the United States. And we have a Supreme Court that says that's discrimination. That isn't saying that any of these people necessarily have problems. That order says, based on their national origin, they cannot come to this country. So that is a form of discrimination. We have a parade that happened in South Boston, and that parade prevented people from gay and lesbian community from marching in the parade, and people legally boycotted. That can happen. But we don't need to take state money to keep that parade going. So that's what this is about. Are we going to use taxpayer dollars to discriminate? Because that's what we would be doing. We would be using our taxpayer dollars to help somebody discriminate. There are other examples as well of actions that might be discriminatory. And are we going to let them happen? Are we going to take our money for a company, for an individual that comes from a country, whether that country is a Muslim country, a Haitian country, a Latin country, or an Israeli country? Are we going to say that we discriminate against them for no other reason than their race, creed, religion, or national origin? I would end with one example. There is a company who was asked to make a cake for a gay marriage, and that company said, oh, we are not going to bake that cake because we don't believe in gay marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman. And the question is whether that company is within their rights in the First Amendment to refuse to make that cake. I would venture to say, whether they are or they're not, I would not want to vote my taxpayer money to buy cakes or have any catering from that company, because that company discriminates. And this bill will prevent that from happening. That's all this bill is. I am clearly and strongly a supporter of the First Amendment, and I don't think that this bill interferes with the First Amendment. And I hope that when you consider this bill, you will just read the plain letters and not hear the rhetoric that you might be hearing today. So I want to thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if I know them. But thank you for letting me speak, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Chairwoman Benson, question? Questions or comments? Senator, thank you very much for your testimony. Representative Ruth Balzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairwoman, for taking me and members of the committee for taking me out of turn. I rise to speak in support of the legislation that's before you today. Let me just agree with my colleague who just spoke and start by making a distinction between what isn't in this bill and what is in this bill. We saw a Boston Globe op-ed this morning that said that this bill would prohibit boycotting. That's inaccurate. There is no language in this bill that prohibits boycotting. I would be the last person, if any of you know my history going back to the 1960s, that would do anything to interfere with the right to boycott. What this bill also is not about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What this bill,
Excuse me, Representative, please, if you could refrain from any comments and/or laughter or jeering during anybody's testimony, the chairs of the committee would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Please continue, Representative.
Thank you. Let's talk about what the bill is about, and not what people have talked about the bill. What the bill says very explicitly is it addresses our procurement policies and says the Commonwealth shall not do business with any business that does not comply with our anti-discrimination statutes. I would agree with the senator who spoke before me that the kinds of examples, I was going to use the same example, so I will go ahead, that any catering company who refused to bake a cake for a same-sex marriage would be guilty of discriminating against people because of their sexual orientation. And this bill would prevent the Commonwealth from doing business with them. If a company, for instance, chose to not hire any Muslim Americans because they inaccurately have a thought about the relationship of terrorism to someone of a certain religion, this bill would prohibit that kind of discrimination by virtue of religion. Or if someone didn't want to do business with someone because they came from Mexico or from Israel, that kind of discrimination would be illegal because it has to do with national origin. This bill simply says we are not going to do business with anyone who discriminates. But we're going to hear from people that the bill says something else. My very good friends at the American Civil Liberties Union have stated that while they don't object to the language of the bill, they don't like the way some people are talking about the bill. I would point out to my colleagues, if we always took votes based on what people said about the bills we were voting on, instead of looking at the text of the bills we're voting on, we would have a very different legislature. And I would appeal to this committee to pay attention to the text of the bill. I would finally add that some people might say, why have the bill at all, given that this anti-discrimination is on the books already? And I would argue that this year, more than ever before since I've been in this legislature, this bill is needed because of some of the voices coming out of Washington, coming out of the White House, coming out of the people associated with the White House, where we've heard ugly things said about people from Mexico, about Muslims, about women. I think that it's time for Massachusetts to reaffirm, especially in the current climate, our commitment to oppose bigotry, hatred, and discrimination.